On June 28, 1914, a 19-year-old student named Gavrilo Princip stood on a street corner in Bosnia. Earlier that morning, his group had already failed one assassination attempt, but through a sheer lapse in security, the Austro-Hungarian prince's car took a wrong turn and stalled exactly 5 feet in front of him. Gavrilo Princip pulled his gun and fired. This single act triggered a cascade of violence that consumed the globe for 4 years. By the time the fighting stopped, the total death toll had climbed to 20 million people. History usually attributes this massive global slaughter to that one bullet in Bosnia. However, there is a staggering logical gap between a local political murder and a world-spanning conflict that forces millions of people on multiple continents to kill one another. Princip's bullet functioned like a match dropped onto a pre-existing mountain of dynamite. The empires of Europe had spent decades stacking the explosives. He simply provided the spark that set them off. To understand the source of that explosion, we have to look at how Europe was governed in 1914. This wasn't a continent of modern democracies. It was a collection of empires run by aristocratic monarchs who wielded absolute authority over their subjects. These rulers treated the continent like a family estate. In fact, the 3 most powerful men in Europe, King George V of Britain, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, and Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, were all literal first cousins. Their family business was imperialism. These cousins were obsessed with expanding their borders, invading foreign nations, primarily to loot their resources, extract raw materials, and claim new territories for their personal treasuries. Enforcing this level of global extraction required massive physical force. Between 1870 and 1914, these empires quadrupled their collective military spending, building enormous navies and standing armies to protect their colonial profits. By treating the global map as personal property, these royal elites turned the world into a ticking time bomb of competitive greed and militarized paranoia. These monarchs traded entire populations like currency. In 1908, the Russian and Austro-Hungarian empires struck a secret backroom deal. Russia would allow Austria-Hungary to annex Bosnia, provided that Austria-Hungary supported Russia's future claim on a strategic trade strait near Istanbul. The South Slavic people living in Bosnia were never consulted. They were simply handed from one empire to another, a move that enraged the local population and gave rise to revolutionary student groups committed to violent resistance. To protect their respective loot, the empires built a web of secret treaties. The Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente functioned as a massive continental trap. If any one country felt threatened, the others were legally bound to join the fight. This trap snapped shut the moment the prince was killed. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia mobilized to defend Serbia, Germany attacked Russia, and France joined the fray to support its ally. These alliance systems were designed to ensure that a single regional border dispute would inevitably trigger a profitable worldwide conquest for the victors. This left the ruling class with a massive logistical problem. Monarchs and capitalists do not fight in trenches. To wage their war, they needed a way to convince millions of poor working-class men to leave their homes and die for imperial profit. The elite used state-controlled media to push a specific brand of linguistic nationalism. They framed the act of dying for a monarch's territory as a noble, selfless defense of one's homeland, masking the economic greed driving the conflict. Official state art was weaponized to glorify military incompetence. For example, Alfred Tennyson's poetry took a botched charge that led to the useless death of hundreds of soldiers and portrayed it as a heroic, romantic sacrifice for the nation. For the average soldier, the primary motivation was often quite simple: survival. Amidst severe unemployment and poverty, the army offered a steady paycheck and a way to feed a family, provided the soldier was willing to risk his life. Through a combination of financial desperation and manufactured heroism, the ruling class successfully engineered a psychological trap that led millions of men directly into the line of fire. The reality of the front lines bore no resemblance to the recruitment posters. Soldiers spent years standing in waist-deep mud, battling disease and waiting for the terrifying arrival of poison gas. Anti-war poets like Wilfred Owen documented the horrific truth of the trenches. He described the sight of friends coughing up blood and the dawning realization that the enemy in the opposite trench was just another cold, hungry man fighting for a different ruler. In December 1914, this shared humanity briefly broke the nationalist spell. During the Christmas truce, opposing armies dropped their weapons, entered no man's land, and shared food and songs with the very men they had been ordered to kill. The ruling elite reacted to this solidarity with immediate brutality. High-ranking commanders ordered the men back into the trenches and resumed the shelling, threatening to execute any soldier who refused to continue the slaughter. This conflict functioned as a calculated sacrifice of the working class, used to feed a machine built for imperial conquest. Despite the noble language of the recruitment posters, the reality remains. Millions of people were used as fuel for a fire they never asked to start.